The vast emptiness of space stretched before Admiral Sarah Chen as she stood at the bridge of the CSS Defiant, her weathered hands clasped behind her back. The holographic display showed what the Galactic Council had dismissively called humanity's toy boats, Earth's combined fleet of just over 300 vessels. Small, they said. Primitive, they laughed. Insignificant, they mocked. But those pompous council members had never witnessed what human ingenuity could accomplish when backed into a corner. "Admiral, the Drachnid fleet has just dropped out of hyperspace," Lieutenant David Thompson reported, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Initial count shows approximately 2,000 warships." He paused, swallowing hard. "They're deploying an attack formation." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Drachnids, like most of the elder races, relied heavily on their superior numbers and advanced technology. They'd never bothered to study human military history, never learned about the battles of Thermopylae, Agincourt, or the Atlantic convoy raids. They didn't understand that sometimes the smallest force could change the course of history. "Send the signal to all ships," she commanded, her voice carrying across the hushed bridge. "Operation Hornet's Nest is now in effect." The crew around her straightened, their training kicking in as status reports began flowing through the neural networks connecting Earth's vessels. The enemy fleet approached with the arrogance of inevitability, their massive dreadnoughts leading the charge. Their energy signatures blazed across the tactical displays like angry red stars, dwarfing the modest blue dots representing humanity's ships. But size wasn't everything, and the Drachnids were about to learn that lesson the hard way. "They're entering the kill zone," David announced, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "Waiting for your command, Admiral." Sarah took a deep breath, remembering the countless simulations, the years of preparation, and the sacrifices that had led to this moment. When the Galactic Council had denied Earth's petition for recognition, they'd thought they were dealing with just another young, naive species. When they'd granted the Drachnids permission to pacify human space, they'd expected a quick submission. Instead, they'd given humanity exactly what it needed: time to prepare and a reason to fight. "Launch the swarm," Sarah ordered, her voice hard as steel. Around the Defiant, hundreds of smaller vessels began deploying what looked like debris, thousands of tiny objects barely larger than escape pods. The Drachnids' sensors would register them as space junk, right until the moment they revealed their true nature. "Swarm deployment complete," David confirmed. "Enemy fleet is maintaining course. They haven't adjusted their shields." Of course they hadn't. Why would they waste energy defending against space debris? Their arrogance would be their undoing. Sarah watched as the distance closed, timing it perfectly in her head. 3, 2, 1. "All ships, execute Maneuver Sierra 7, she commanded, "and may God have mercy on their souls, because we sure won't." The bridge crew worked with practiced precision as humanity's fleet began its dance of death. They were about to show the galaxy why you should never underestimate the species that had turned warfare into an art form. The species that had learned to punch above its weight class through millennia of conflict and innovation. The tiny fleet was about to teach the Drachnids a lesson they'd never forget, assuming any of them survived to tell the tale. The swarm activated as one, each pod's outer shell dissolving to reveal the marvel of human engineering hidden within. Thousands of microdrones, each barely larger than a coffee table, sparked to life. Their quantum processors, reverse-engineered from salvaged alien tech, made them nimble enough to dance through laser fire. But it was human creativity that had turned them into something truly devastating. "Swarm formations holding steady," David reported, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "The Drachnids are maintaining their approach vector. Their point defense systems haven't even activated yet." Sarah nodded, remembering the countless war games that had led to this moment. 6 years ago, when the Drachnids had first appeared in Earth's space, demanding submission and tribute, humanity had seemed hopelessly outmatched. Their ships were ancient by galactic standards, their weapons considered primitive, their shield technology barely worthy of note. But what the aliens hadn't counted on was humanity's greatest weapon: desperation bred innovation. "Status report on Task Force Beta," Sarah commanded, watching as the main Drachnid fleet drew closer to their trap. The massive alien vessels, each one large enough to house a small city, moved with the precision of predators who had never known fear. "Task Force Beta is in position behind the third moon." Lieutenant Ana Rodriguez responded from her station. "Stealth systems are holding. The enemy's long-range scanners are still focused on our main fleet." Sarah allowed herself a moment to remember the faces of those who hadn't lived to see this day. Captain James Chin, her brother, who'd sacrificed his ship to buy Earth time to prepare. The scientists at Luna Base, who'd worked themselves to death creating the swarm technology. The colonial settlements that had fallen, buying humanity precious months with their resistance. "Energy spike detected in the enemy fleet," David announced suddenly. "They're charging their main weapons." "Right on schedule," Sarah muttered. The Drachnids were following their standard combat doctrine to the letter. Like most elder races, they'd grown complacent in their superiority, relying on the same tactics that had served them for millennia. The first salvos from the alien fleet lit up space like artificial stars, continent-killer beams of energy that could vaporize conventional ships in seconds. But the human fleet had already begun its response, executing a maneuver that would have been impossible with larger vessels. "Execute Operation Firefly," Sarah ordered, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's future. Around the Defiant, the tiny human ships began releasing clouds of what appeared to be metallic dust. Another piece of space debris that the Drachnids would dismiss until it was too late. The massive energy beams struck the clouds, and for a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the impossible happened. The beams scattered, split into thousands of smaller energy streams by the specially engineered particles. What should have been a devastating first strike instead became a spectacular but harmless light show. "Enemy fleet is showing signs of confusion," Anna reported, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "They're adjusting their formation, receiving multiple communication attempts between their ships." Sarah watched as the Drachnid fleet began to realize that something was wrong. Their neat, orderly formation started to waver as ship captains tried to understand why their opening salvo had failed. It was the moment of doubt she'd been waiting for. "All ships, prepare for Phase 2, she commanded. "Let's show these aliens why humanity survived every extinction-level event our planet threw at us. Deploy the Ghost Protocol." The Ghost Protocol activated, and Sarah watched as her fleet seemingly vanished from existence. The experimental stealth technology, developed in secret beneath the ice sheets of Europa, didn't just mask their energy signatures. It bent light itself around their hulls. To the Drachnid sensors, it would appear as if the human fleet had simply ceased to exist. "Ghost Protocol stable across all ships," David reported, his voice tight with concentration. "Swarm units are maintaining position. The enemy fleet has halted their advance." On the tactical display, Sarah could see confusion rippling through the alien formation. Their neat battle lines began to break as individual ships turned this way and that, searching for targets that were now invisible to their advanced sensors. This was the critical moment. Everything hinged on the next few minutes. "Admiral," Anna called out, urgency in her voice. "We're detecting power surges across the enemy fleet. They're charging their area denial weapons." Sarah's jaw tightened. The Drachnids were reacting exactly as the tactical simulations had predicted. When faced with an invisible enemy, they would attempt to saturate the entire sector with energy pulses. It was a brute force solution typical of a species that relied on overwhelming power rather than finesse. "All ships, begin maneuver Omega," she ordered. "Task Force Beta, prepare to emerge on my mark." Her fingers gripped the command rail as she watched the enemy fleet's energy readings spike. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology. It was in their ability to turn an enemy's power against them. The swarm units, still invisible to Drachnid sensors, moved into their final positions. Each microdrone carried a quantum reflector, another gift from humanity's desperate innovation. Alone, they were insignificant. Together, they formed a web that could redirect even the most powerful energy weapons. "Enemy weapons at 90% charge," David announced. Estimated firing time in 30 seconds. Sarah thought of Earth, of the billions watching this battle through their neural links, of the children in underground shelters, the families in hardened bunkers, all waiting to learn if humanity had a future among the stars. They'd been pushed to the brink of extinction, forced to evolve or die. The Drachnids had no idea what they'd created when they'd backed humanity into this corner. Task Force Beta reports ready, Anna said. The enemy still hasn't detected them behind the moon. 20 seconds to enemy weapons discharge. Sarah took a deep breath. Everything they'd planned, every sacrifice made, every secret weapon developed, it all came down to this moment. The Drachnids thought they were fighting a primitive species with a tiny fleet. They were about to learn they were fighting the descendants of creatures who'd clawed their way up from the primordial ooze through millions of years of survival against impossible odds. 10 seconds. The enemy fleet's formation had tightened again, their massive ships arranging themselves in a sphere to maximize their coverage. Their weapons would fire simultaneously, releasing enough energy to vaporize everything within 1 billion kilometers. It would have been a perfect strategy against any other species. 5 seconds. All ships, Sarah commanded, her voice steady as steel, prepare to execute final solution protocols. Remember your training. Remember Earth. Remember why we fight. The Drachnid weapons reached full charge, their energy signatures blazing across the tactical displays like artificial suns about to go nova. In the next few seconds, either humanity would prove itself worthy of the stars, or they would join the long list of species that had fallen to the Drachnid Empire. They're firing. Time seemed to slow as the Drachnid weapons discharged, their combined energy output enough to shatter a small moon. The vacuum of space lit up like a newborn star, waves of destructive force radiating outward in a perfect sphere of annihilation. For a moment, even the bridge of the Defiant fell silent, every human heart beating in unified anticipation. Impact in 3, 2, 1. David's voice trailed off as the impossible unfolded before them. The swarm activated as one, quantum reflectors snapping into position with microsecond precision. The devastating energy wave struck the invisible network, and something beautiful happened. The entirety of the Drachnid assault began to fold in upon itself, channeled and redirected by the very laws of physics the aliens had thought they understood. But then something went wrong. Terribly wrong. Admiral. Anna's cry cut through the tension. New signatures detected. Massive hyperspace ruptures forming behind the Drachnid fleet. Sarah's blood ran cold as she watched the tactical display. This wasn't part of the plan. The space behind the enemy fleet was tearing open, reality itself shredding as dozens of new vessels emerged. Their design was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Organic curves mixed with crystalline structures that seemed to bend the light around them. The Drachnids are panicking, David reported, his fingers flying across the controls. Their formation is breaking. They're trying to move away from the new arrivals. Sarah's mind raced. The Drachnids were supposed to be the dominant force in this sector of space. Their fear of these new arrivals suggested something that changed everything. Status of the reflected energy wave. Still contained within the swarm network, but the quantum reflectors are reaching critical stability, Anna answered. We have maybe 2 minutes before the network collapses. The new fleet made no aggressive moves, instead forming a perfect circle around both human and Drachnid forces. Their ships pulsed with an inner light that made Sarah's eyes hurt if she looked at them too long. Then every communication system on the bridge lit up simultaneously. We're receiving a transmission, David announced. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, in all known languages, simultaneously. Let's hear it, Sarah ordered, though her instincts screamed that they were now playing a much bigger game than they'd planned for. A voice filled the bridge, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, but somehow all of these at once. We are the Watchers. We have observed. We have waited. We have judged. Sarah's grip on the command rail tightened. In all of humanity's desperate preparations, in all their careful planning, they'd never considered that they might be part of a larger test. The Drachnid fleet hung motionless now, their weapons powered down, their ships clustered together like frightened children. The cycle continues, the voice announced. But this time, something has changed. The prey has become predator without losing its soul. The weak have become strong without becoming cruel. Humanity has passed the trial they never knew they faced. Admiral, Anna whispered, the energy wave. The reflectors won't hold much longer. Sarah faced a decision that would echo through human history. The reflected energy wave could still destroy the Drachnid fleet. Their original plan could still succeed. But now, with these watchers judging their every move, she wondered if victory was still the right goal. The fate of not just the battle, but perhaps humanity's place in the galaxy, now hung on what she did next. And they had less than 60 seconds to decide. Sarah Chen had spent her entire military career making impossible decisions, but none quite like this. The reflected energy wave contained enough power to obliterate the Drachnid fleet, yet its containment was failing. Every second that passed brought them closer to a cascade failure that could tear apart space itself. 30 seconds until containment failure, Anna announced, her voice steady despite the pressure. The tactical display showed the Watchers' ships maintaining their perfect circle, silent observers to humanity's moment of truth. Sarah thought of her brother James, of his last words before sacrificing his ship. Sometimes victory isn't about destroying your enemy. Sometimes it's about proving you're better than them. Open a channel to the Drachnid fleet, she commanded. The bridge crew exchanged startled glances, but David's fingers moved swiftly across his console. Channel open, Admiral. Sarah took a deep breath. Drachnid Command, this is Admiral Chen of Earth's Defense Force. Your weapons fire is currently contained within our quantum reflection network, but that containment is failing. We have a choice to make, together. The response came quickly, the Drachnid commander's translated voice carrying a note of desperation that would have been unthinkable hours ago. What choice, human? You have us trapped. We can work together to safely disperse this energy, or we can all die here. Our scientists believe a coordinated effort between our fleets could create a channeling effect, directing the energy safely into deep space. But we'll need to synchronize our shield harmonics exactly. There was a moment of silence, broken only by Anna's countdown. 15 seconds to containment failure. The Drachnid commander's response carried centuries of pride warring with the instinct for survival. Why would you help us? After everything we've done. Because that's what makes us human, Sarah replied, her finger hovering over the command interface. We can choose to be better than our instincts. Now will you help us, or do we all die together? 10 seconds, Anna called out. The Drachnid fleet began to move, their massive ships turning in perfect unison to align with the human vessels. Transmitting shield frequencies, their commander announced, May your gods forgive us our arrogance. 5 seconds. All ships, align your shields with the transmitted frequencies, Sarah ordered. Prepare to channel on my mark. She watched as human and Drachnid ships, bitter enemies just moments ago, moved in concert like partners in a cosmic dance. Mark. The quantum reflection network collapsed, releasing the contained energy. But instead of destruction, the combined shield harmonics of both fleets created a massive corridor of force, channeling the devastating power into the depths of space. The view screens automatically darkened as the energy beam lit up the void brighter than a supernova. When the light faded, the Watcher's voice returned, but this time it held something new, satisfaction. The test is complete. For the first time in 50,000 cycles, both species have passed. Sarah blinked in surprise. Both species. The trial was never about military victory, the voice explained. It was about transcendence. The Drachnids needed to learn humility. Humanity needed to prove it could show mercy even in the moment of triumph. Together, you have demonstrated that evolution of consciousness is possible. The crystalline ships of the Watchers began to pulse with increasing intensity. You have earned your place among the stars, not as enemies, but as partners. The real test begins now. Can you build a lasting peace from the ashes of war? As the Watchers' ships faded from normal space, Sarah looked at the tactical display where the Drachnid fleet remained. Their weapons were powered down, their shields still harmonized with the human fleet's frequencies. A new channel opened, and the Drachnid commander's voice held a tone she'd never heard from their kind before. Respect. Admiral Chen, the alien said, perhaps we should talk about the future. 3 months after the Battle of the Quantum Mirror, as historians were already calling it, Sarah stood at the observation deck of the New Geneva space station. Below her, Earth shimmered like a blue jewel in the void, while ships of both human and Drachnid design moved in harmony through the orbital lanes. The latest reports from the Joint Research Team are in, Admiral, David said, joining her at the window. He kept his position as her aide even after their promotion to the newly formed Combined Fleet Command. The integration of Drachnid power systems with our quantum reflection technology is proceeding ahead of schedule. Sarah nodded, watching as a massive Drachnid engineering vessel escorted a group of smaller human ships toward the Mars shipyards. It was still strange to see their former enemies working alongside humanity, but the past months had proved that necessity could forge stronger bonds than anyone had imagined. And the civilian exchange program? She asked, though she already knew the answer. The news feeds were full of stories about human and Drachnid families hosting each other, learning about cultures that had been ready to annihilate one another just a season ago. Over 10,000 applications from both sides, David replied with a smile. The cultural integration teams can barely keep up with the demand. Turns out there's a lot of curiosity on both sides about how the other half lives. Sarah's hand unconsciously touched the memorial pin on her uniform, a quantum reflector design surrounding the names of those lost in the war. Her brother would have loved to see this, she thought. James had always believed that understanding was more powerful than fear. Message from High Commander Vextal. Anna's voice came through the comm system. The former Drachnid Supreme Commander had become one of their strongest allies in building the peace. The Galactic Council is ready to receive our joint petition for recon.